Hello and welcome to Kismet and the Dark Yogi, brought to you by SourceMovement.com. We're here for people who want to be radically authentic and courageously vulnerable. So whether you're a yoga teacher building a tribe or an entrepreneur running a business, we're here to get your energy and mindset positioned for success. No more stress, no more lack of energy. Lead with full potential. Our intention is to leave the world a better place than we found it and inspire you to do the same. So let's have some fun. Here we go. Here's the thing that I really wanted to talk about today. Top of my list was really just making your job easier as a yoga teacher. I've just been to so many classes where the teacher's just working way too hard, and I can tell, by the end of the class, they're feeling kind of tired. They're kind of checking in and out during the class, and it's like, what's going on here? And there's kind of a disconnect through it anyway. And so I really wanted to talk about this, and I also wanted to mention, because it came up in our teacher training, some people were asking about this, and I found it really interesting. So I'm going to start with this story. I'm a trumpet player, for any of you who don't know me. Or know that about me, and I used to play. I freelanced all over in the Michigan area, Michigan Metro Detroit area. Played with virtually every orchestra in the area, tons and tons of different conductors, different styles, all sorts of things. And I had this one orchestra conductor, and he was the most frustrating person to me because we would sit down. It was a pretty competent orchestra. It wasn't the Detroit Symphony, that's for sure, but it was, there was good players in the orchestra, and it was solid. So what he would do before every piece before we would play it, it didn't matter if it was the first time we were rehearsing it or if we had, if this was like the dress rehearsal, he would take time before it to go through all of the tempo changes and all the things and explain to us what he was going to do all the way through. And be careful and watch out for this and watch out for that and everything else. And it was so frustrating to me because it's like, dude, we're a decent orchestra. All you have to do is conduct it. Where's the trust, man? You're assuming that we're just going to screw it up and that we've got it wrong every time. And so not only are you wasting time and effort and energy by explaining stuff that you may very well not have to explain to us at all because it might go just fine, but you're also frustrating us because you're overloading us with information and you're actually increasing the likelihood that we will make these mistakes that you're talking about. It's the most frustrating thing in the world to me. He's gone on to destroy a couple of decent orchestras now, and, well, I live in San Diego and play with a great orchestra out here in La Jolla, so it's not my problem. But at the end of the day, the reason that this came up for me was because I see this so much in yoga classes, and here's how it goes. It sounds something like this. You're putting somebody into a pose. Let's take a triangle pose. Just for argument's sake here, and they'll explain all of these things about triangle pose that you maybe never wanted to know or never needed to know to have a great triangle pose, and tell you all the ways that you're going to do it wrong and all the ways that you're going to hurt yourself in the pose before you even have an experience of the pose. And it's the same thing. It's like you're wasting words, you're wasting time and effort and energy, and you're giving them information that they may or may not be relevant to them at all. At all. So the strategy for teaching this to make your job easier, their job easier, and for them to be able to get a better result and a better experience for their yoga practice is this. It's so simple. Put the people in the general shape of the pose first. Just get the basics out there. Just really, really simple. Then be quiet and observe what's happening for them. Just look at their bodies. Look at how they're breathing. And then you'll be really well equipped to deliver very concise, direct, and relevant physical instruction to help them refine their pose. Right now, this might seem crazy to some of you, but I wouldn't be saying if I hadn't seen this a million times in yoga classes where people are trying to overteach the poses in a way that's just totally not relevant, and it's exhausting them. And you feel like you're just kind of running through the script, this is how you teach a triangle pose. Triangle pose is so incredibly simple. And when you can get them into the general shape of it, then you can see, are they collapsing into their side, right? Are they totally collapsing into their hips? Are their arms just kind of flailing about? Is their spine really contorted in it, or are they in a more neutral position? You'd be surprised at how little instruction is needed for most of these poses. It's just not that complicated, especially once they have an experience for it. Now, for sure, are there things that you want to do to kind of tweak and refine that? Absolutely. Like there are so many different creative ways that you can do that. And there's two reasons for the physical instruction. Now, the first reason is to bring them into their bodies, help them have a more fully embodied experience of the pose. So that can be like kind of refining sorts of things in triangle pose. Maybe it's going to be like, with the toe that's pointing forward, towards the front of the mat is, push down a little bit more through the ball of the foot and feel your leg energize. Feel the energy come all the way up your leg and into your hips, and then create a little bit more space as you lift your belly and open up through the side. If you're going towards your right leg, it's your right side, so it's not all bent and collapsed. That you're making a little space in the ribs there, and your spine is actually in a more neutral place. Right? You say that really simply and concisely to them, and that'll draw them in and give them a little bit of a different experience there. And it can be so simple. Like it can be that one little thing. It could be a shoulder blade thing. Feel your shoulder blades connect on your back. Why? So you've got a nice clean line of energy that's connected from fingertip to fingertip. Awesome. Is it really necessary to have that, to have an awesome triangle pose? Not really, right? But it helps to bring them into their body so they can have an experience. And then secondly, another reason to give physical instruction to them is or more refined physical instruction, more specific physical instruction, is to, I hesitate to use the word correct, but that's the word that's coming up for me, but to help, put their body into find the shape of the pose, a more natural shape of the pose. Again, if it's a newer student and their spine's totally contorted in it, or their legs are just locked down, or their arms all jacked back, and their shoulders way out of socket, things like that, like that is probably pretty uncomfortable for them, and they may not just have the body awareness for it. There's where you can give some simple, concise physical instruction to help them find their way into it. You can, help with a hands-on assist as well, while you're talking your way through that, sure. But at the end of the day, the reason I'm bringing this up is simply because it is so easy to overteach. And what you wind up doing is just, you wind up confusing the matter. And you create a disconnect. The more quiet that you can be and the more that you can observe what is actually happening in their bodies and in their practice, the better likelihood that you're going to have to not only really connect with them, but to deliver instruction that is incredibly relevant and meaningful. So don't overteach, because it's frustrating. That's what I got. Okay, so that's what we're starting with. I've got more coming, but that's where we're at right now. So let me know what you think about that.
Hi, guys. It's Kim from Indy.
Oh, hey, Kim. Hey, Kim. How's it going?
Good. I was just in the class this morning that was so overtaught, so I'm on the same wavelength you are right now. It's just kind of amazing how you just started with that, so it was perfect for me. It was just everything you just said, so I can't say any more than it's so important for me as a teacher to realize that I don't have to overteach. It was almost she overtaught before we even got into the pose, you know what I'm saying? So we hadn't even moved forward, and we already had 15 instructions. So thank you for that, not overteaching. Right.
How did it, like, tell me a little bit more about, like how did it take you out of your practice? How did it change your experience?
I was just frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was frustrated. It was like, let me take a step first. Let me get into my own body, and then, once I'm in there, then I can get, maybe, whatever pose, say it's the triangle like you're just talking about, right, maybe I do need to, come up a little bit from my pose. Maybe my hand doesn't need to be as far down on my leg because my hip is sticking out or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, so it was just frustrating, and it was taught extremely slow. So it was almost as if we were in slow-mo on the mat also. It was
right.
like, okay, like, please, let me just try. Can I just try, please? You know?
Yeah.
So that's how it was for me today. It was just kind of, you know, frustrating until I decided that I just had to go with the flow, go with the teacher.
Yeah.
I had to just go with her. I figured, you know, I'm in the studio where I'm teaching. I'm taking a class from another teacher, and I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm representing the studio I'm in, so therefore I'm just going to kind of go with her antics, as they were, and take her class. And so here's my question now. She
Sure.
didn't ask for any feedback or anything of that nature. So, but to me, it was a slow flow class, but slow flow and doesn't have to be slow teaching or over teaching, I feel. So,
yeah, if she didn't ask for any feedback, it's kind of tough. You know, it's kind of tough. What you might do is if you can come up with a really good question for her, then you could ask her a really good question, like, you know, like, hey, like, what was the, I'm just curious, you know, I just kind of want to learn, you know, what your process is behind this, you know, what was your thinking behind delivering, you know, X, Y, and Z instructions before we had even been in the pose?
Okay.
You know what I mean? And just comes, but the careful part, I would say that the part for you that just to be careful with is that it doesn't come from from a judging kind of a place of like a I know better kind of a place, but you can really hold a space of genuine curiosity. Right. And then who knows? Like she might have a really good reason for it. It might be totally, you know, contorted, you know, or whatever, but or it might not. You know, like she might have a good reason, but you know, it's you never really know until you ask the question.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
All right. Who's next? What else you got, everybody? Over teaching. It's frustrating. And you can imagine how I felt, you know, sitting in the orchestra and this guy, you know, it's like you're going to tell me everything I'm going to screw up before I even have it. Like, dude, give me a chance to do it right, you know, and just see how it goes from there. All right, we've got another one here.
That's me. Hi,
hey.
Vanessa from North Carolina.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Awesome. It's really good to hear your voice.
I'm excited that I actually got to change things around on my schedule today so I could be in on this. And about the over teaching, I teach at 3 different spots, so it's 3 different groups, and I guess I have a different way of teaching for each group because I'm used to them. But a lot of times, you know, I'll have a class, and after class I'll be like, oh, man, I feel like all I did was talk and instruct and give y'all all these cues. And did I talk too much tonight, guys? Because I'll ask my classes, you know. And sometimes they'll be like, well, you know, we did kind of like, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. You know, I was just wanting to get people into a better place in their postures. And so then the next time I taught that group, I would go by and rather than saying, you know, in your triangle, pull your shoulder blades on your back, I would just go to the person, you know, as I'm walking around through the class that doesn't have their shoulder blades on their back and just touch the middle of their back.
Right.
And say, now, let's all line our shoulder blades up, and they're the ones that I'm really talking to, but you don't want to single them out, you know.
Yeah.
So I would just touch, and they would pull. But then I have one group that they love every kind of instruction you can give them. And they'll tell me, no, you know, every time you would say something, I would do that, like push down through the pad of your foot. Mm-hmm. And they do, and it would make my posture so much better. So I think you have to really look at your class. And if it's a group you're used to, you know what to do. It's when you get the new people in that you're really not sure what they're used to. And usually after class, I'll go up and say, you know, in your other classes that you've been to, am I giving more instruction or less instruction? Is it better or is it worse? You know, I try to be able to talk to people so I can kind of make their practice theirs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really interesting point there in that it's making their practice there. So with the group that wants all of that physical instruction, you have to look at the pattern at what is behind that. Why? Like, they want their posture to be better. Like, okay, like, but what is better?
Right.
And what is that need to constantly have more, to be more correct? It's an interesting question, and I'm only throwing it out there because it's an interesting topic of conversation, and it leads back to the root of, why people show up to yoga anyway, right? Something's not right. Like, they want something out of it, right? So what is it that they are really wanting to get out of that? I'm not saying it's bad. It's cool that they like that and that they're interested in it and everything, but what's the step beyond that? And ultimately, one of the yardsticks of spiritual growth is self-sufficiency.
Right.
So the more that people can become more and more self-sufficient, the better off they're going to be. They can take that true sense of ownership over their practice and over their class and know that. And it's a scary place for a teacher because, your job is actually to make yourself irrelevant, right?
Well, that's funny you say that because the other night in this particular class, I told them, I said, now next week we're not going to get to practice because this is at a church where a group we meet. And I said, because they're having Bible school and there'll be kids everywhere. And I said, so, the better y'all get without me, the better teacher I am. If y'all can do without me, that means I'm a good teacher. And they're like, oh, no, but you're not going to quit, are you? I'm like, no, I'm not. But if you can do a practice on your own, that means I'm doing my job.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you then spending the time together is just, icing on the cake. Like, that's the best part. Like, everybody's together and we can have a whole different experience. But ultimately for them to be able to take their practice in there, and take the reins themselves is a super powerful place to be. I know that Kisma has a thought here too. So
yeah. Hey, Vanessa, Kisma, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. And hi, everybody on the call. I'm actually calling in from Ohio. I'm visiting my mom. So it's fun to be on this side of the call. But I love you. Like, you're after my heart, and I'm so glad you're in this tribe. The thought that came to me when you were talking about just how diligent you are in instructing the classes and leading them and helping them to be able to practice on their own, it sounds like you really understand the physical instruction and you're getting them there, and it's so fabulous. And what I had a thought, yeah, for sure. My thought was, if during the next couple of classes that you taught, if you really change the game and say you gave them the physical that you usually do, but maybe you backed off a little bit just to kind of watch them and see how they're moving on their own and encourage them, like, you've got this is your practice. And then you started to ask questions that are more life-based, like you mentioned teaching at a church. So a great question there is, yoga is really a practice. It's not a religion, but my question to all of you this week is, how's your faith going? Like, is it really serving you this week? And they'll be like, wow. Because whenever we ask a question like that, like, how's your faith? Or how are you guys doing with your families? How's work going? Is yoga, and you could even say something like, my intention for all of you is not to have just an amazing physical practice, but that each and every one of you is a better human being every single day of your life. And that stuff grabs them, and they're like, wow, I want more. And you don't need to over-deliver on that. It's just asking a few questions, rhetorical questions that get people thinking about their lives and where they are, because we all know. I mean, I know when I started yoga, I was in Hong Kong. I had Indian teachers, and it was so hard for me physically, but my internal disposition changed dramatically really fast. And I knew that. They didn't talk about it so much, but I knew enough that I had to keep going back. And so I feel like here we have the ability to really address that. Is like if you guys all of a sudden think you're more grounded because you're practicing, it's true. This is real. And if, we have like an attorney that was a student of ours for years, and she's a partner in a major, major law firm. And she showed up to our study group and said, this is helping me be a far better attorney and a better person. And so it's those insights that you can start to seed with them through questioning, where then they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And through that, you can expand your teaching and do workshops that are more than just the physical. There's just, whether it's transformational or spiritual, whatever you want it to be, but that's where you really start to have this connective tribe following you. Does that make sense?
It does. It does very much.
Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like they trust you, man, and they love you. So you're now the leader. You're the inspired leader, and you really don't need to change much. It's just tapping into their being, on a day-to-day life, and how you can really support them and to remind them how they're growing.
And is that something you do during the class? Because usually, like at the end, we're Shavasana, then we come up out of our Shavasana and we're all sitting cross-legged. And I'll say something like, your yoga practice here tonight was on your mat, but now take your yoga into the world.
It's beautiful. When you can insert that during a class, when you can hold everybody in a plank pose and say, by the way, let me just ask you guys, while you're breathing and while you're holding this plank, how's it going out there? Like anybody struggling? Because we struggle in this plank pose all the time. Anybody struggling in life? Yeah? How's everything working out for you? Do it right smack in the middle of class. And they'll be, it's also for you, it'll be something, we use this language a lot, it's called a pattern interrupt. So for you, it'll be a different style of teaching, and they'll wake up. So you don't have to worry about them because you know how it is and this is for everybody out there, when we teach a ton of physical and it's the same thing, people tune it out and they really don't hear our voice. Therefore, they're not really feeling our presence.
Yeah. That
so
makes
try
sense.
it.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
Post it Facebook form. If you struggle with it, we'll definitely guide you. But, I can tell like you're their leader. So take it up a notch. Really go for it. What do you think, Nick?
Love it.
Sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going to do that.
Have some fun with it. That's the next place. Like it's all good. Like what you're doing is awesome. It's just a matter of like, hey, like what's next? Where how can I how can I empower them in a even bigger way with their own yoga practice and in their own lives? And that's how you become an inspired leader.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. The great and powerful Kisma has spoken. Anybody else before we move on to the next thing here, which is kind of an extension of that? Anybody else want to chime in? Got anything you want to share? Anything on your mind? There it is. This must be Lauren.
It is.
Hey, how are you?
It's so great to hear your voices. And anyway, my question about this would be, what about the older clients? Because I already know they're struggling. So, because I work with mostly elderly people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, so I can get them into a pose, and just about any pose in my chair yoga class, if I make them hold it for a little longer, that's a challenge. But I was just thinking, what can I ask them? Because they're already struggling in life, and I know it because I hear about it all the time. And I just want to inspire them to look up or, open up a little bit more, try something new.
That is a great question. For people like that, it's more a matter of if they're already struggling and you know that they're struggling, like gratitude goes a long ways. So you can use gratitude with them because one, it's a soothing emotion, so it's going to help them to feel more grounded and present. And also just more stable in who they are. Because older people whose bodies are breaking down, they're losing trust with their own body. And that's a really, really scary place to be. Like when your body starts to do weird things and you don't know what's happening and you can't do things like this, like then you're losing trust with your own body. And the problem is that we are so deeply attached to our bodies that we don't know what to do with that. It's terrifying. So when you can just bring them into a place of gratitude for what is working, then you can also divert their attention from what is not working. So physically speaking, it's enough to just guide them into the general shape of the pose and say, just have an experience for this here. Just notice where you are, and then note, like, how amazing is it that your body's even able to move, right? All you did was just think a thought, and magically, like, thousands and thousands of nerve impulses and muscles are firing in order to make this silly shape with your body. And you didn't even have to do anything. Look at how amazing that is.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I'll use gratitude. I do, and they are grateful, and they are stronger, and they know it, and they are digging it. They are so digging the yoga. I can't tell you how.
Hey,
fun.
Lauren.
Yeah.
Hi, dear. It's so good to hear your voice. I have a thought too. You know, this is again for everybody who's trying to inspire, who is inspiring. I'm sure you guys are all inspiring in class. Imagine is one of the most powerful words. So even for your seniors, I mean, look, I'm here with my mom in Ohio. I don't need to, she's going to be 89, so I can tell you it's a trip. The last 48 hours have been a whole bunch of fun in a bunch of different directions. But if you can simply say to them, and there can be a lightness to it. It's like, you know, you guys, I know you've lived such an awesome life, and I know you've had struggles, and I know day to day some things don't really go like you want it to. Like maybe your hip's hurting, maybe it's whatever you hear them complaining about, you can kind of make it light. And then you say to them, imagine what each and every day would be like if you didn't have to complain.
Bam.
Just imagine. And then you say to them, by the way, that's your choice.
Ooh.
And some of them will get it and some of them won't, and that's perfectly fine.
Okay. That's
right,
great.
because they can imagine. And they might just imagine it for 10 minutes. Like I can get my mom in that space for maybe 12 and a half minutes, but at least it helps a little bit. But for a class that you're in front of regularly, just remind them, imagine, guys, like you didn't give all in your life to be complaining and be miserable. Like we can do this together. And then you remind them you're there for them.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's great. That sounds really good.
You're a rock star.
Yeah, the complaining's big for people. Like, you know, with all the time and effort and energy that people spend complaining about things. Yeah, I see my folks go through this too. You know, my folks are, I don't know, 70,
yeah,
70 something. I should know that, but it's a lot of like they don't have anything else to think about, and so they start to think about that, and it's like, whoa, you know, let's refocus here a little bit.
Yeah, it becomes the dialogue, all the aches and pains and what they've been doing, because that's really what they spend their time doing. So I'm coming up on 1 year here with this yoga class, and so as an anniversary gift, I will speak to them about all the improvements that I see and that they've told me themselves what, you know, how much better they are. And
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, use that constantly, you know, because it is those little wins for people that keeps them in the game. So, you know, and oftentimes they don't see improvement because they get so desensitized to the pain and yoga is a natural relief from that. So it's more subtle. And so they're not as apt to notice the difference. They're just like, oh yeah, I used to complain about this all the time, and now it's like really not so much. But they just forget about it. I see it all the time. You know, they'll chalk it up to some other magical kind of thing or whatever. But it's like, no, like you've really actually been working at this, and now you're getting a result. And here it is. So when you show that to them again and again, they're like, oh yeah, and then it re-inspires them and recommits them to their practice.
Yeah, keeps them coming back.
Yeah, but it's so easy to forget. You know, like my folks. I know some of the things that they were struggling with before, and then I had them do this health program, and they did it, and they actually got great results from it. But all the while through, they're like complaining, and I'm like, dude, like you've been living your life this way for like 70 years. You think you're going to turn it around in 3 months? Like you've made massive strides in 3 months. So, like let's focus on what's working and keep doing that and then let the rest start to fall into place. So it's a way of just refocusing their attention. And there's different ways with the dialogue that you can just play around with that, but ultimately it's your language and just getting creative with that process.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
You got it. Great to hear from you.
Same here. Big hug.
Yeah, always. All right. Unless there's anything else, the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is still in the line of over-teaching. And just remembering, this is a really important part. I mean, remember that I want to help you. I want to help you make your job easier. Teaching yoga is hard. Like, there's a lot going on in a yoga class for you to manage all of these different components of it, the physical aspect of it, the logistics of the room, the different personalities in the room, and delivering the physical instruction, trying to include some kind of an inspirational message that's really going to engage people to keep them coming back and getting great results in their life, and yada, yada, yada. Like, there's a million other things, too. So it's a lot happening there. Anything that we can do to make our jobs easier and to be more efficient is going to serve us really well. It's going to give us more energy that we can use to serve more people in different ways. So the next thing is along the line of overteaching, and that is to just remember that people want a result. That's really all that they want. Nobody wants to do yoga, right? They want to do yoga so that they can have X, less stress, more flexibility and connection with their body, more energy, right? Whatever that thing may be for them. A lot of active people do yoga because it allows them to do more of what they want to do. Like, runners love yoga because it lets them run more, because without it, their body breaks down faster. So it's just remembering that, and whatever that thing is, like, it's going to show up for them in their own language and in their own way. But ultimately, these people want the result. So just give them the result. Tell them what they need to do to get the result. Now, when we get behind that and start to go into all the whys and the wherefores and all that kind of stuff behind that, honestly, it's not necessary. And it's not to take the parent approach of like the scolding mother kind of approach of just do it because I said to do it. It's not that. It's like, look, you want the result? Here's what you do to get the result. If you really want to know more, then that's a different conversation. But this is what you want. Here's how you get it. And it just makes it so much more simple. So much more simple. They don't need to understand everything that happens in their body when they start to breathe, the Ujjayi breath. It's just not necessary. And it's confusing. So what you wind up doing is casting, how they say is casting pearls to swine. It means you're throwing pearls out there, and at best, they're not doing any damage. But at worst, they're confusing the matter and slowing down the process. And that's the thing I think where a lot of yoga teachers miss. They think like, I have to deliver all this information and they need to know this and this and this in order to whatever. No, you just need to know that it works. You don't know how your car works. Most people don't understand that. They know that you put the key in it and they know how to drive it to get them from point A to point B. Awesome. That's enough. You do not need to understand a combustible engine in order to drive a car. The same way that most people, and I'm talking mainly about the masses here, most people do not need to know all of the intricacies of what's behind the practice in order to get the results that they want and keep them coming back. Then, if they want to know more behind that, then you can start to, then you can have different conversations with them. That's a great opportunity to upsell them into some other kind of a training program. You want to know more about that? Awesome, man. I'm going to do this cool workshop. It's only X dollars. Why don't you come join it? We'll talk all about it. So here's a way that I've seen this happen. A simple theme, right, is our impact on others. So the theme could be said so simply just as, hey, and I think I posted on this in the forum too, but just to recap is basically, hey, your words matter. You can just say this to the class. Hey, everybody, look, your words really matter. You can change somebody's whole life with a few simple words. You can make or break somebody's day. What are you putting out there today? Done. Now, where it'll take a left turn is when you start to explain it. So, and you could say this, and then they might take it this way, and you could say that, and they might take it that way, and then you go into this whole other thing, and it's like way too many words, and it doesn't make any sense, and there's just you're getting into the weeds with all the variables. At the end of the day, it's like you're empowering them to think about it and have a new conversation. So all that needs to be said is ask a powerful question, right? You're like, deliver the statement. That's the strategy for delivering a theme, right? Is very, very simple as well. Make a powerful statement or ask a powerful question. Either will work, and then give them an action step. Cool. So it would sound something like, hey, your words matter. You can make or break somebody's day, and in fact, you can change somebody's whole life with your words. So let's make sure that here and now, we're really being present to ourselves so that when we walk out of here, we can have the best impact on all the people that we love. Done. Like, that's it. If you revisit that in the middle of the class and then recap it at the end, that's really, really powerful. And you don't have to explain the law of karma to them. Yoga class is not the time to be teaching the law of karma. Just totally not. They won't get it. It's just too much going on. So all you have to do is give them that and call it good, and then bring it back a couple times so that you're not over teaching. I was notorious for this. I did this terribly. It was very, very, very tiring for me. That's how I can speak on it with authority, is like I know what it feels like to have to deliver the coolest, like most deep theme ever, and really, have people get it, and explain it so that they get it. It's like, man, just let go of all that, and your life is going to be so much easier, right? Ask a powerful question, make a powerful statement, and then give them an action step. You're done. They'll figure it out. They're smart people, and if they don't, they'll ask a question. So, again, don't overteach. Don't over-intellectualize. It's just not necessary. Just help them get the result that they want. Help them get the result that they want. You're good. You've done way more good than you would have ever done by just sharing an idea that may or may not make sense to them. So there you go. Let's have some thoughts on that. What do you got? Hey, Kim.
Hey, me again. I just say right on with everything that you've just been saying. Sometimes it gets so damn complicated in the class that you're further away from where you need to be. So for me, I really like that whole idea about just asking that power question, giving the statement and then an action.
Yep.
I love it. It's just so simple, but and the placement, the beginning, the middle, and the end, just to pull it all together. It's almost it's like writing. It's a theme. It's writing a paper. It's it just pulls it all together.
Totally. It really is that simple.
It's food for thought. It's just throw something out there, and less is more. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and that's all I'm really talking about. The reason that I do this is so that I can be more creative in class and more present, right? So it's using a framework, right? So that's why I give the strategies. The strategies are so simple, right? Strategy for physical is just get them in the general shape and then really observe and then give physical instruction after. If you get the sequence off, then you're going to be spinning your wheels.
Right.
Right? It's not going to be as effective. Same thing with this is make a powerful statement or ask a powerful question. Either will work. You can do both, but use as few words as possible to be really concise, and then tell them what to do. Like, they need to know what to do with that information. And in yoga class, it's not like rocket science. It's just like, hey, like let's just really consider that, And then the other questions that you ask is like, hey, like how does that show up in your life? How many times has somebody said something to you that you've held on to for years?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, like that's another really powerful question. Everybody's had that experience. Your dad said something messed up to you, however many years ago. You didn't mean anything by it at all. It's just something that, like, who knows, whatever. But however that happened, it hooked into you, and it could very well have changed your whole life. Set off a chain reaction that changed the way that you think. That is crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating how that happens, right? But none of this is being said. This is all just like you're just asking one question, and it triggers a thought cycle in them that starts to really examine the process. And what is yoga if it's not self-inquiry, right?
Right. Right, because that's when at the end of the class and somebody comes up, or maybe it was you that went to an instructor and said, hey, it felt like you were talking right to me.
Yeah. It's the best. I love that. And I'm like, yes, I am magical.
It was like, yeah, right. I'm like, oh, wow. Wow, was that directed at me? So, yeah, okay.
But that's how you'll get more of that, is because you're just asking questions that will be relevant to everybody, and then their own mind will work it into their own language and their own circumstances and make sense of it. That's what their minds do. That's what our mind does, is it organizes the information, right? That's what your thinker does. Mm-hmm. So you allow them the process to do that. The strategy of just keeping it that simple really just gives you then a framework. So it's like, hey, here's the deal. And then you can just play around with it. You can insert different kinds of themes or whatever's coming up for you for that day, but it gives you a place to come back to, so that then you can just kind of unfold the process. It's not to say that you just do it the exact same every time. Yeah, sure, you play around with it and everything like that, but the formula will give you freedom in your class and just make it easier so that you can keep it simple, like really, really simple.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. Anybody else? Anybody else out there over teaching? You telling them way too much stuff. You'll know it when their eyes start to glaze over. Okay. Cool. Well, that is going to bring me to the last thing that I just wanted to talk about, and it's just really talking about, how and why this comes up. The overteaching thing, I think, comes from a couple different places. One is just, hey, it's an interesting place to be in if you happen to have some insecurity around yourself and in your teaching. Using information is a great way for you to assert your authority. So you'll overteach so that they'll think that you're smart, you know what you're talking about, and that way they'll like you better or they'll respect you more. But ultimately, what are you doing? You're trying to be right. Now, this is a big one, everybody, trying to be right. Like, if you just think about it in your own life, like, forget about yoga teaching for a second, but in your own life, like, how many times are you trying to be right? How much effort and energy do you spend trying to be right? Explain yourself or justify your thoughts so that you can be right. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that I've done that, and I do that. It's damaging to my relationships. It's damaging to my own peace of mind. Definitely wastes a lot of time and effort and energy. For what? So any tendency that you might have in a class to overteach, that's a place, that's an area of opportunity. If you find yourself like, hey, like wow, like I'm really saying a lot. Like, is it because I'm just really inspired here, or am I trying to prove something? What are you trying to prove? Who are you trying to prove it to? And it'll show up in a million different times and ways, right? But all those times that we're trying to be right. Arrogance, right? Now, there's certainly, areas in there where, you have to hold the space of your class, and you do need to be right about some things because it's your class, right? But by and large, trying to convince people, right, so that you can be seen as the authority, like that's the thing that's going to be, one, again, it's going to diminish connection, and two is it's going to be frustrating for you. Why? Because you're attached to the result. That's karma yoga, right? Is being detached from the results, being in dynamic action, but being detached from the result. It's hard for us to even wrap our heads around that, being detached from the result. But that's what we're trying to do little by little by little, is just detach from the result. The more detached we are from the result in our classes, for our students, right, the more powerful we will become in the process, because we'll be objective. When you're attached to the result, you're pushed and pulled whatever way, and then you'll try to, that's the human mind. We'll try to maneuver and navigate to get there, right? And it'll cause a lot of agitation on its way. But if you can stay detached from the result, then you can stay powerful and objective in the situation. That's how you'll know that exact right question to ask whenever it needs to be asked. And it's not because you're trying to be right, or you're trying to get it right, or you're trying to prove yourself as an authority. It's simply because you have an opportunity to help that person get what they want, and you can see it clearly enough because you're not clouded by your own attachment. That's a really powerful place to be. So, being right. Where are you trying to be right in your life? How is it affecting your relationships? How is it affecting your peace of mind? What would happen if you didn't need to be right? Or here's another one. What would happen if you didn't need to make somebody else wrong in order for you to be right? Share your thoughts. Deep thoughts today. Frankie.
You said arrogance. I figured I'd have to chime in.
You and me both, brother.
For me, this portion that you're talking about, it's really being able to come from a place of humility, being able to even say to the class, like, or whoever you think that you're leading, like, hey, I'm one of you. I don't know everything. I don't know shit. So let's try to figure this out together. You know, be here to support and help out each other along the way. You know, when we, personally, I know that I'm turned off by someone that thinks they know everything and want to fucking walk up to them in the middle of class and go, what the fuck are you doing? Sorry for cursing.
All right.
But, you know, that's why I make sure I try to remind myself going in, like, I'm one of these people. I'm just lucky enough to be able to teach, you know, not that I know more, not that I understand more, just I'm lucky enough to have this ability. So, and for me, making sure that I don't overteach, that I don't put too much pressure on a message or talk too much, is me talking about the issues that I have in my own life, the things that I have to work on as a reminder. For me, that messaging almost always comes from my own struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
Being able to relate to people on that level.
It's like, I know
there was no real question in there. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. No, man, I so appreciate the share, and what it makes me think of is, you know, is the space of just walking in front of a group of people with all that you have and all that you are, in order to, with the intention of helping them get what they want in some way.
Right.
And letting them, you know, whether it's to be seen and heard or understood, or just knowing that somebody else out there, you know, struggles with these things too, or it's just a connection of we're all in this together, you know, whatever it is, you know, but that's the space of possibility when you step in with all that you have and all that you are, and just say, hey, like, here I am, let's do this. Now, it's funny, right? Because the irony is that you're coming into it from a humble place, right? A truly humble place that is honest and saying, I don't, you know, we're pretty much in the same boat. Like, if we're really going to get down to the nitty gritty here, you know, we're splitting hairs if we're talking about something that I've figured out or haven't or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. So right. in the act of walking in so humbly like that, you actually assume the role of leadership in a much more powerful way. And then people will look to you for that, simply because you're modeling something that they're not able to do. Most people are not able to stand in front of a group of people and say, hey, man, this is who I am, and really feel good about it. So it's ironic, I think, that it works that way. Isn't it funny? But you know, you're giving off exactly, you know, what you want to receive, and what you receive then is the role of leadership. It's a great share, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? What do you got? Hey, Bella, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Hi, Nick. Hi, Kisma. Hi, everyone.
What's on your mind?
I have a question. I mean, my class, as everyone knows, I'm a newbie in teaching, and you know, I'm getting there, and it's getting better. My confidence level is growing. But yesterday, Saturday, my last class that I taught, I had someone walk out, and I knew she was going to walk out because she was very annoyed by my teaching method. And I guess my question is how do I get past my ego? Because that to me was just like, she walked out and I took it as like, wow, like I have 33 other people that are enjoying the class. And then she took it a bit further. She went to the director of the establishment, and she said, oh my God, that teacher's an awful yoga teacher. She doesn't know the flow. So the director, you know, brought that to my attention, and I was kind of like baffled by that, because like I went through the whole sequence, and I guess once again, it was my ego. So my ego just kept showing up in this. So I guess my bottom line question is, how do I get past that? How do I not make it about me?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. That's a really great question. Okay, so there's a lot that goes on with it. So you said you had 33 people in class?
Yeah, I started off with 12. So now I'm up to, and again, I know that in the teaching of yoga, I'm really not supposed to think about that and say, wow, because I am supposed to just show up as a leader and not make it about me and say, oh, wow, I have 33 people now.
Yeah, no, but so you're doing something right for sure. To put 33 people in a class is that's no small task. Okay, so awesome. And it's not ego driven to look at the results and say, these are my results. I took this class from 12 people to 33 people. Great. Okay. There's nothing ego. We do that too. You'll see in our marketing, we talk about stuff like that, because we've been able to take classes from 4 people to 40 people in pretty short periods of time. Right. It's not like, hey, look at how awesome I am. All it is basically just saying, this is what I did, and I figured it out, and I'd like to help you figure that out too. Cool. Right. Get it?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so there's that piece, and then really it's just good job getting somebody to leave your class, because you know what I mean? If everybody just always loves you and everything like that, it's yeah, that's cool and that's nice and everything, but if you're starting to step out and starting to really express yourself and starting to really speak passionately about what yoga is and how it can impact people's lives, and that you're going to polarize some people, and it's going to rub some people the wrong way, and they're just going to leave, and then they're going to find any reason that they can to complain about you. You didn't know the flow, or God knows what they'll make up. It'll be anything. They'll pick whatever they'll pick whatever they can, or whatever came up for them, and they'll use that in that way, and then they'll go complain because that helps them to feel heard. And I don't know, honestly.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I try, because it's also part of who I am. I'm really. With me is what you see, what you see is what you get, and I really shine through in my classes with that, because I get to be vulnerable, and I'm comfortable with that with the students, because and I do share with them, and and I like that. I like that whole connection, because I'm really connecting with them and they're connecting with me, and so. I just don't understand why it really bothered me a lot that one person did walk out and took it as far as to complain about me to the director, because then I become insecure and say, oh my God, maybe my job is going to be threatened here or compromised. But you put a very good spin on it, and I appreciate that. It makes sense.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me too. It shouldn't be too baffling as to why you would take that personally. It's because you put your heart and soul into your teaching, and you really care about what you do. And when somebody's walks out on it and then goes and complains about it, it's hey man, this is really personal to me,
Right. Yeah.
So that's it is understandable. So the question becomes is basically do you want to suffer or do you not want to suffer? And I think I know you well enough to be you don't want to suffer with it. So the way that you can do that is, it's a great question too. If the manager does come to you with that and say, hey, I had people walk out of my class, not a ton of people, but fairly regularly, people would leave or they'd complain or God knows what. The studio managers would mention it to me, and then we'd talk about what happened. And my best, when I would get defensive about it, is when I would know, okay, something's off with me. If I'm getting, I'm starting to get defensive about it. But when I can just have an open conversation with them about, hey, what did that person say? And then I can just receive it. Hey, maybe I did something that was a little off. It's possible, maybe there was something there, for me to learn from. Great. Take what you can learn and then leave the rest, and just know that whatever is coming out of their mouth is their stuff. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from it. It just means that, it may or may not be relevant or accurate.
Yeah. And that makes sense. It does make sense what you're saying. It's like take what you can and drop what you don't need from it.
Totally. It's all just information. It's all just feedback. And then if the studio manager really has a thing about that, about, one person leaving and complaining and stuff like that, and they're coming down on you, and all you have to do is just draw their attention back to that. Say, hey, this class used to have 12 people, and now it's got 33. So, I mean, I'm open to learning and growing, but I'm not going to fret over one person.
Yes.
And I don't think, and you can invite them to do the same. And I think, you can just tell them, hey, like, I think it would be beneficial if you didn't do that either. Because why don't we focus on what's actually working instead of the one person that is not, whatever. I had a person, they get, like, somebody unfriended them on Facebook, and they're trying to figure out, from their like page, who was it, that unliked me and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, dude, like we have to have a thicker skin for things like that and just to develop it, right? It's not to become insensitive. It's just to develop that sense that, and that confidence that if I'm really being myself, not everybody's going to like me. I mean, if that person saw the number of opt-outs, that we get in any given day or week from our email list, they'd trip out. They would trip out, man. And some people even complain. Like, they opt in for the thing, they go get the thing, and then they immediately opt out and report us as spam. People do that, though, and it's just like, okay, man, like, I can see your timeline. I see that you opted in, and then 10 minutes later, you went and clicked on the thing, and then right after that, you clicked opt out and reported me as a spammer. Cool. Like, thank you, I mean, that's just normal stuff. Like, internet numbers are like big numbers, so, it's like no big deal. And nobody's, we only had our account throttled once, and that was just because we had transported a whole, a list from another server in, and that's totally normal. So, anyway, long story short is like, hey, you're doing great. Like look at the results that you're creating and really just keep focusing on what's working. And when that happens, just, give that little nod to yourself or just step back one layer and you can always ask yourself, like, hey, like, what's behind that? Like, why am I really hurt by this one person?
Yeah, and that's a very good point and a valid point, and that's what I've been trying to do this week, because I do go back on Saturday, so it's going to be, so I want to leave that out of the classroom and just give them myself, and be of service to them and continue to do so.
Now, some of these people, too, this is for everybody on the phone, this is a very interesting one, is that some of these people will come back. They'll totally come back to your class. And our natural tendency is to just, like, avoid that person, I would go up to that person and say, hey, how are you doing?
Okay.
Don't ask them about why they left or get into any of that stuff. If they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. Just say, hey, how are you doing today? I've seen you around. I just, I want to talk to you, get to know you a little bit. And then you'll really break down the barrier.
Right.
Yeah, because
I like that.
Some people walk out of my classes, and those people have actually turned into some of the most loyal students. Because when I was able to have conversations with them.
Right.
Yeah. Or they might just disappear and never come back, and that's cool, too. No big deal.
And that's okay.
Well, totally
thank you.
Cool. No big deal.
Yeah, well, thank you. That is helpful to me. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. My pleasure.
Okay. All
right, gang. Anybody else? We're a little over, but if there's something burning that you want to ask about, I'm here. We might as well take one more question if you've got one. You must act fast, though. It's going once, going twice, and we'll call it. Great call today, everybody. I hope that was helpful for you, and I'd love it, if you have thoughts or insights or just kind of notice yourself, with if any of these things are coming up. Post it up in the forum. Love to hear from you there and love to just, see how it's working for you and see what ways that you can make your job easier and get a better result for your people as well in the process. Really help them get what they want out of it. It's a sacred mission in life to help people, get what they want. And you're on that path. You're part of the solution, everybody. So I just can't tell you what an honor it is to share a space with all of you. And thank you so much for being on the call and for chiming in and sharing your thoughts and and your questions and everything like that. That's the deal. Hit us up in the forum if you got any questions. Such a pleasure, everybody. Thank you so much for a great call, and we will look forward to talking with you soon. All right, have a great day.